Today we have a hot analysis about some critical points for the Commanders, and look, this is one of those issues we need to discuss in depth if we want the team to have a solid season. And the burning question is, how do the Commanders, a team that has shown enormous potential, continue to make amateur mistakes at decisive moments? And hey, if you haven't liked the video yet, now's the time, because we're bringing you everything firsthand. Well, folks, the Washington Commanders have shown grit and determination. However, every experienced fan knows that the Giants love to cause trouble in divisional games against us. This rivalry is old, and even when we're up and they're down, the Giants manage to turn what should be an easy win into a real nail-biter. It's like every game against them is a cardiac test. So the question that remains is, are we really ready to overcome these ghosts from the past? Today, I'll tell you the crucial points the team needs to adjust before the game to secure this victory. Take advantage and subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any of these hot Commanders updates. To start, we need to talk about the kicking position. Yes, Washington started the season with some accuracy problems from their kickers, and we know how much that affects the scoreboard. But fortunately, the addition of kicker Austin Seibert seems to have balanced things out. He brought renewed confidence, and so far has shown precision and composure in decisions. We know he still has a lot to prove, but we can say it's an evolution that brought more peace of mind. Still, fan, have you thought about the pressure he faces? Each kick can decide the game, especially in such a tight match as this one against the Giants. Will he be able to keep his cool this Sunday? We're going to need a focused Seibert with nerves of steel. Another essential point is the passing game. Jaden Daniels is starting to show his ability to throw longer balls, something that, let's face it, we missed in the first games. Before, the offense seemed limited to short passes to tight ends and running backs, making field advancement difficult. Now, with Daniels gaining confidence to throw deep, the wide receivers are managing to exploit more of the field and expand possibilities. Of course, he still needs to improve his quick reads to avoid sacks and turnovers, but progress is visible. So, folks, do you also believe Daniels is the guy to take our offense to another level? He's showing his worth, but the pressure will only increase. Speaking of defense, we need to remember how important it is to contain an opposing quarterback who's dangerous with his legs, like Daniel Jones. In the first matchup this season, our pass rushers did a good job limiting Jones's space, and that was crucial in slowing down the Giants' offense. We had special help from linebackers Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, who brought energy and game reading to prevent runs. However, some injuries to our defensive line since then have raised questions about the ability to maintain this same level of containment. Will we see the same compact defense this week? The Giants know how to exploit any gap, so our defense's work will be intense. With all that adjusted, there are still new challenges we need to solve. One of them is preparing against the Giants' blitzes. This team leads the league in sacks and has a defensive line that, to say the least, is scary. Dexter Lawrence II, for example, is a sack machine and is having an award-worthy season. But besides the known names, the Giants have a defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, who's a master at confusing opposing offensive lines with blitz packages. This was a problem in our first meeting with them when they managed to sack Daniels 5 times. We can't let that happen again, right? Cliff Kingsbury and his coaching staff need to have a well-tied strategy to protect our quarterback and prevent him from being an easy target. One of the biggest challenges for any offensive line is facing a versatile defense like the Giants, which brings players for blitzes from all sides. In our last matchup, for example, the sacks didn't just come from linemen. Jason Pinnock, a safety, was responsible for 2 sacks, and cornerback Drew Phillips also managed to pressure Daniels. It seems like the Giants' entire defensive sector contributed to this pressure. This type of defense makes our offense vulnerable, and it's essential that quarterback protection is reinforced so we don't lose advancement opportunities. Do you think our offensive line is ready for this challenge? I confess I get anxious just thinking about it, but I have faith they'll manage to adjust and shield Daniels. Another delicate point for the game is the Commanders' psychological state. With 2 straight wins, it's natural for the team to enter the field with more confidence, but this self-confidence needs to be controlled. The history of games against the Giants teaches us that if we let our guard down, they can turn the game around at any moment. We can't underestimate them, and the Commanders need to enter the field with the mentality that this victory isn't guaranteed. And that's where locker room leadership becomes crucial. Will our captains and coaches be able to maintain the team's focus? That's a question that will only be answered on Sunday. Now, folks, let's talk about the fans. This game will be in New York, and we know that fan support is always extra fuel for any team. Despite being in a complicated phase, the Giants will have their stadium full, and this can make our on-field communication difficult. The noise interferes with plays and quarterback calls, so we need the Commanders to adapt quickly to this hostile environment. This involves mental and technical preparation, so the team knows how to handle external pressure while focusing on executing their plays. Do our players have the cool heads to face this challenge? You probably already know. The unforced penalties. That's right. These were the infractions that almost gave the game away to the New York Giants at Northwest Stadium in Week 2. And the burning question remains, how do the Commanders, a team that has shown enormous potential, continue to make these amateur mistakes in crucial moments? Well, the issue here is that the team was marching up and down the field with remarkable confidence. It seemed like the offense had finally clicked, with a strong offensive flow and a ball-moving strategy that seemed almost unbeatable. But as soon as they reached the red zone, the story seemed to change. Penalty after penalty. And every fan feels the weight of these penalties that simply undermine offensive potential. Imagine this at the start of the season, with a team that's still finding its rhythm. Does this compromise the team's confidence? These penalties proved very costly, so much so that the team had to rely on 7 field goals from our rookie kicker Austin Seibert to secure the win. That's right, 7. A franchise record, but between us, field goals don't win games. Touchdowns do. And that's what the Commanders lacked, capitalizing on opportunities and taking advantage of good field position. Do the players not feel the pressure, or is this a discipline problem that needs urgent correction? And the infractions didn't stop in the red zone. We had a penalty that nullified veteran Austin Eckler's return touchdown right at the start of the game. Now, you can imagine how this affects team morale. Starting the game with such a big moment only to see it all nullified by a penalty. Man, that hurts. And then we had a sequence of 5 false start penalties in the red zone. Right in the red zone. Every drive was stopped before we could even reach the end zone, and that's when things get really complicated. And if the offensive line can't maintain discipline in these situations, how are we going to ensure scoring? Looking at the names, we see that key players like Ben Sinnott, Nick Allegretti, Cornelius Lucas, and Sam Cosmi were among those responsible. Now Cosmi, one of the main offensive linemen, committed 2 of these errors. A solid and well-trained right guard making penalties at crucial moments. Are we seeing a communication problem on the offensive line, or are these players getting flustered in critical moments? What's missing for this team to fine-tune these details and really stand out? It's interesting to note that the Commanders had been playing cleaner football for several weeks. For us fans, this was a relief. Each week it seemed the team was improving, and these penalties were being avoided. But when they faced the Chicago Bears, 3 critical penalties may have cost what could have been 3 touchdowns. It's as if, at times, the Commanders simply forget the lessons learned and revert to old habits. And if this continues, we can forget about playoffs. Someone needs to emphasize discipline. Moreover, these specific false start and illegal man-downfield penalties were committed again by Allegretti and Cosmi on plays that could have been decisive. One of these penalties even took a touchdown off the board. And the other? It negated a promising play that would have put the Commanders inside the 5-yard line. Imagine the frustration. Incredible plays simply crumbling due to avoidable errors. It's hard for any fan to watch this without wondering, how long will this continue? Another point was Trent Scott's false start, which forced the team to settle for another field goal. And the worst part is that the Giants, who are desperate for wins, know that the Commanders tend to make mistakes in key moments. If they take the field with the idea of pressuring our offensive line, they might achieve an unexpected comeback. This is when Washington needs to keep their heads straight and play with discipline. And for us, as fans, that's the request, that they play with composure and focus until the last second. Another point of attention for the team is Malik Neighbors. This Giants rookie wide receiver had an impressive debut against the Commanders in Week 2, being targeted no less than 18 times, with 10 receptions for 127 yards and a touchdown. The guy is a reception machine, and if our defense doesn't keep an eye on him, he could be a nightmare in the next game. Neighbors recently returned from a concussion, and, although he was quiet against the Eagles, he played very well against the Steelers. Is the Commanders' defense ready for this challenge? Fortunately, in recent weeks, the Commanders' secondary has shown improvement, especially under Joe Witt Jr.'s guidance. The performance against the Chicago Bears receivers was positive, but we'll need an equally strong showing to neutralize any threat from Neighbors. He's the type of player who can dominate a game if not contained, and the Giants' offense will certainly try to exploit him to the maximum. Washington needs to maintain defensive solidity and learn from past mistakes. And, if I may offer advice, this is a game where the Commanders need to start strong. The last thing we want is to give hope to a team that's in a difficult situation. The Giants desperately need a win, and they've beaten Washington on several occasions in recent years. If our team can establish the rhythm early on, it will be a clear message that they're no longer willing to yield to division rivals. This is the type of game that can set the tone for the rest of the season. Now tell me, do you think our team will manage to maintain discipline and avoid these unnecessary penalties? Have they finally learned their lesson? This is the time to show who the Commanders really are.